So guys, for those who just joined us, this is John Romano. He's my good friend. He is a botanist. He is a massage therapist of 30 plus years. He's a massage instructor for more than 2 decades. He's a master aromatherapist. He's also an orchid winning and judge of orchid contests, and they've named plants after John. He's very humble. He won't tell you all that, but he also wears several other hats. I call him the guy that is the chapter 480 in Florida. He knows all things law, all the laws of Florida. Even the board goes and talks to him about the laws because he's all up into everything when it comes to being very precise with details. And he was the former vice president for the state of Florida. So, John, you've got lots of experience. And I want to talk a little bit about your history because I think that plays a big role into what you've done with aromatherapy, and especially what you did more specifically in the lymphatic field where nobody else was able to do what you did.
Okay.
So are you ready for us to roll out all these questions?
I am probably ready.
Okay, so here's the hard question.
Okay.
I've been to the place where you were born and raised. It's absolutely beautiful. And it just lends itself, if anyone's had the opportunity to be there, to see all the nature in that area. Where am I talking about, John? Where were you born and raised?
I was actually born in Philadelphia, but I was raised in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
And the property there now is owned by a very well-known company I think people would be familiar with. Who's there now?
QVC isn't there now.
Yeah, QVC, and they had lots of fields, I know still today, a lot of natural medicine there. I think I was passed up by a horse and buggy when I was there because there's a large...
Actually just to the west of Westchester. Westchester's kind of in the center or southwestern center of Chester County, Pennsylvania. Just to the west of Chester County is Lancaster County, which is where you start having the Amish and the horses and buggies. So they do come into our area sometimes.
Yeah, it was just beautiful. All things natural. Everything, just the whole community itself seems to be centered that way. So that was where you were raised and how you were raised. Yeah. And I know you were sharing with me also, you have a bit of a Native American background as well.
Yeah, my dad's mother and my mom's mother were Native American.
So really ascribing to herbology from the time you were a child. And how did that all develop for you?
Well, I mean, growing up in the, I guess, suburbs, country area, we always had a garden every year. So, we would always plant, fruits and vegetables. We always had fruit trees. Right behind our property was a huge field, and it went right into a wooded area and a reservoir that served most of Chester County. So basically, I would, look at a plant and be like, well, what's this plant and what do I do with it? And, a lot of people are trying to rip dandelions out of their yards. And my dad's mother would be out there pulling them out and making them for salads and stuff like that for the springtime.
Did they call it chigadia back then to you?
Yeah.
Because our grandparents used to do the same. They would pick them and make dandelion salad. They called it chigadia, and we waited so that they could make salads. And I never see anybody out there anymore picking dandelions. In fact, they're flying around all over the place here, and nobody wants anything to do with them. But you were great.
It's funny because in the springtime, the best time to pick the greens from them is right before they flower, because if you wait until they flower, then it turns the leaves really, really bitter and you really can't eat them anymore. And then what they do is they take the flowers and they fry them.
Oh, wow, the buttery tops.
Yeah.
Wow, we're missing out on a delicacy. We'll have to try that next week. Everybody go find dandelions and let's, saute them and see if they come out good. But John, as you grew up in that environment though, you said you were a rather sickly child for a while. You had autoimmune issues yourself. So I want you to share that with other people.
I was actually born with a respiratory infection, and every year in the fall, once the leaves started to fall off the trees, and you get that, autumn rain, and then you get the mold and the mildew, then I would always have respiratory infections and bronchitis and pneumonia and things like that every year. So it wasn't my favorite time of the year. So from fall until spring was not a really good time. I would always have something.
And then you did something along the lines of aromatherapy that made a difference for you. What was it?
My family belonged to a gym, and I would go into the gym, and back in the locker rooms, they had a eucalyptus room where the wood and everything else was made from eucalyptus wood. And you would go in there, and man, the smell of eucalyptus would just be overpowering. And that would just open everything up because, eucalyptus is a bronchodilator. And, I'd be able to breathe, and, it would help with infections and stuff. But after a little while, I noticed it wasn't working as effectively. So, that was kind of when I started looking into aromatherapy and wondering, well, why is it? And then I found out that what they call a single note oil, just like eucalyptus, if you use it too often and too frequently, after a while, it's not as effective to a person. And I was always told that, it's better to use blends. So then I started looking into other blends that would be really good. And I came up with a blend that I called Easy Breathe because it made me breathe a lot easier. And it was a mix of eucalyptus, peppermint, rosemary, thyme, tea tree, and lemongrass.
Wow. Now, did you start with the aromatherapy first in your career, or did you start with the massage therapy?
Pretty much the aromatherapy because I was really into herbs and herbal medications and stuff like that before I started even doing massage.
So can I joke around with you and tell them what I call you?
Sure.
I always call John Neville Longbottom. So if you're a Harry Potter fan, that's how I've always known John. So I'm going to tell you more about him. But when I met him, we were actually on a job interview, and I'd never seen him before. And he's carrying a paper bag, and there was this beautiful smell coming out of the paper bag. And I was like, who is this guy? I need to know what's in the paper bag. And that was the beginning of a relationship. I don't think we ever knew that we were going to wind up serving on the board together and spending many years as friends. And I was just so grateful to have him. As you know, you've all seen the pictures of the one patient that I had that had a 5-foot leg with 28 years of stagnant lymph. Guys, I'm not sure that you know what that smells like or that you want to. But if you're in practice, I'm going to tell you that's pursed-lipped breathing because you're inhaling that's toxins sitting there and it's permeating the skin, the air, the table, and everything in your room. And that's why we need to talk to John because we had to do something about it for the safety of the patient, number one, and also for the practitioners. When you're in there inhaling that kind of smell, it is just not good for you. So John, before we get into that part of it, let's go back to where you became a massage therapist and how, because you have a unique story.
When I was going to college, actually up in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, which is directly between Reading and Allentown, and it is Pennsylvania Dutch country. I kind of needed a little bit of a job there. I was up there for art and biology. My intent at the time was to take my drawing skills and merge it with my biology skills and actually do some biological illustrations for textbooks. So, art supplies are expensive. So kind of needed a job. So one of the jobs that I had was working at a clinic in Allentown where I did a apprenticeship and got my license up there.
Wow. And then at what point did you decide to come down to Florida?
I had always, I mean, ever since my family vacationed down here, I kind of wanted to live down here. Um, and then I was working one year, and the place I was working at, they were remodeling the store, and we had like a couple weeks off. So my friend Mark, it was funny because um, we used to just like, if it was a nice day, we used to just like go to a park and have lunch and chill out and stuff like that. And one day, um, during this whole reconstruction, I called him up and I said, "Hey, it's a nice day. Let's take a drive." And he goes, "Oh, you want to go back over to the park?" And I said, "Why don't we go to Florida?" And he was like, "What?" And I said, "Let's drive to Florida." I said, "I have a week off, and why not go down?" And he goes, "Well, I don't want to like be psyched to go to Florida and have you change your mind." I said, "The minute I hit I-95 South, there's no turning back." And we're really close to I-95 South there anyway in Westchester. So we got in the car, we drove down, and then while I was here, I was like, you know, this really does feel like home. And at the end of that week, I came back and I had kind of looked at some into ways of moving down, and kind of nothing happened. And then in 2001, I had a friend who had a house or a condo in Pompano. And earlier in 2002, he was like, you know, let's go. And, you know, I got to go down there. I'm in between tenants, and I just want to check on things. And why don't we take a couple weeks and just go down? And the unfortunate thing is right before we were going to come down, I had my winter bronchitis and coughed really hard and whatnot, and ended up having 3 blood clots in my left lung. So we had to put the vacation off for a little bit. And when I got out of the hospital, the doctor was like, "Well, you need to like have bed rest for a couple of weeks." And I'm like, "Well, you know what? I can lay on a beach for a couple of weeks just as easy as I can lay in a bed." So him and I came down, and I visited a couple of orchid nurseries while I was down here, and answered some questions for one of the owners at one of the nurseries. And she was like, "You should work here." And as I was leaving, she was waving this application, and, you know, "Did you want to fill out the application?" And I was like, "Oh, I thought you were kidding," and filled it out. And she's like, "Well, my husband's up doing a talk at the Pennsylvania Orchid Society." And I'm like, "Oh, that's my society." And he said, "Does anybody know John? He applied to our place. They were like, hire him." And they hired me and told me I had 2 weeks to move down. And I've been here since the beginning of 2002.
Shared, it was meant to be. And we're so glad that you did, because after you got there too, you were really embraced by the Florida community as a massage therapist too. And
yeah, that actually took a little while. I actually have somebody at my door. Can we pause this for a couple seconds and you guys talk?
Yes, we can pause. We'll wait for you. Go ahead. Go
Okay.
answer.
Thanks. I'll just be a minute.
Okay. So guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pull up the screen, because he has a little bit of a PowerPoint that he wants to share with us. And we're going to learn a little bit about aromatherapy from the master. And then we're going to talk about his special blend and how he got that together and how it was used actually in the White House. So let's see if everyone can see the PowerPoint. Can you view this? If you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
All right, 2 thumbs up. We got this right.
Yeah,
I love that. Okay. So how many of you use aromatherapy currently?
I do to a small extent.
Okay. Yeah, especially with the lymph population, I love it. It's just really being cognizant of what things to use because they've got that stagnant lymph underneath their skin. And sometimes what would be okay on an unaffected limb is very much affecting the limb, the one that is affected, and it can make it blister and things like that. That's why we had to ask John to help us come up with a formulation that would break down the viscous lymph so it would flow without doing harm to the initial skin. And that takes more than just talent. That takes an expert. And I wasn't that expert, by the way. I'm just confessing that. So we've worked with a lot of wonderful people that come together to help us make this lymphatic drainage that much better. I also noticed, I think it was Joyce. Joyce, you said that you're still up there picking the dandelions.
Well, now they're all gone by, but when they first start, we did pick them. One of my friends did, because we had a whole, it was like she had a whole field, so it was fun.
Now, did you actually eat the salad? Have you eaten chagadia?
Yeah, it's good. It's good when they're small. And now that they're overgrown, I feed them to my chickens.
Oh, okay. So, wow, we got quite a diverse group tonight. I was looking at where you were all coming in from. I wonder who's coming in from the furthest. Let's see. I'm going to take a look here. So we have North Carolina, Pennsylvania. We have Maine. And just Angela, I'll make sure that I ask John the question about the thermometer. Don't let me forget at the end of the show so that we know. Okay. So now I know what the questions are. Good. Okay, so guys, just a little bit about John. This is the one you hear me talk about a lot of times in the classroom because so many of you have expressed wanting to have a second license when you come down to Florida. And a lot of times I've given his phone number or his contact information because he does know the process and the steps. Just if you didn't know, in Florida, I think we're in the number of 90,000 therapists, massage therapists. Yeah, that's a lot. My number is 27111. So I've been around for a while. If you're at 27,000, you've been around for a while. But we have 90,000. So sometimes trying to get things accomplished, we have a nice board. They're pretty good at getting things done. But John knows all the details about how to get your license from one state to another because it's not just automatic. He also has done a lot of the aromatherapy classes for the Florida State Massage Therapy Association. So if you ever come down and want to do one of their conventions, you'll see him there. And from earlier, when we talked about MPS with instructor Laney a few weeks ago, John also teaches MPS. So imagine integrating lymphatic drainage for the thickened lymph, MPS to help break down the scar tissue, and lymphatic drainage to get it all to flow. It is quite a synergy to be able to put three powerful modalities together and get that lymph to move. So with us, we had John create the blend for Dr. Robert Lerner. When we were working in the clinic with that particular situation, oh my gosh, almost 20 years ago, that was before MPS, we needed something that would break down viscosity. And so John is back. He's going to explain to us what goes on with aromatherapy oils. Because even though I'm a practitioner like you guys, I went to school, I learned a little something about aromatherapy, but I didn't have enough knowledge to handle the case that I had lying on the table in front of me. I knew how to do the lymph drainage, but how to break down that viscous material was another whole situation. And by the way, just so you know, this is going on for, like I said, 20 years. There were people out there that were selling products for the lymphatic community, and we would try them out. A lot of times people would bring it to us at Dr. Lerner's office. We would try it, and I would try to measure people, and we didn't see any reflectable change. And sometimes it actually made the skin worse if it had an aromatherapy component. And that was when we thought of John, because he's a master aromatherapist and a botanist. So John, we're going to let you take it from there. I've got your PowerPoint up, and we're going to talk a little bit about aromatherapy. So chemical compounds, go to, tell them all about it.
Well, you know, the different, basically, like when I talked about the eucalyptus, there's a lot of different chemicals that are in eucalyptus essential oil that make it effective. Like eucalyptol is the main one that people think about. That, you know, bronchodilator chemical that just opens you up when you smell it, but there's other compounds in there as well that all do different things. So having an understanding about what they are gives you better understanding. I mean, you know, basically, you know, you're in a class in school or something, and you have the basic, very basic understanding of aromatherapy, where somebody says lavender, and you think lavender, it's relaxing. Well, lavender has a lot of other properties besides just relaxing. Lavender is one of the best oils that you can use for burns. It's great for sunburn. It's great for chemical burns and heat burns and things like that. Gadafosse, who coined the term aromatherapy, had seen some effects of lavender oil, and basically the historical explanation is he was doing an experiment in his lab, and the alcohol burner spilled over and caught fire, and he burned himself, and he just so happened to have a vat of lavender oil, so he plunged his arm into it, and he noticed within a couple of weeks that, you know, it healed very fast, and you know, here's the stuff that healed me, and it smells good too, so he came up with the term aromatherapy. Well, Gadafosse knew beforehand that it had some kind of chemical process for healing. The reason why he said he had the accident is because he planned, according to his notes later on, he planned on burning himself just to see if it would heal him. And if he told authorities that, well, I just burned myself so I could see if this stuff works, you know, they would have thrown him in the loony bin, because nobody does that who just happens to have a vat of, you know, lavender essential oil just sitting around. So
Now that's something I never read in my textbook, so I'm getting something fresh off the press about aromatherapy.
yeah, so that has to do with a little history of aromatherapy. But you know, when we were, before we made the thing for Anne, when I go back to talking about my Easy Breathe, you know, I made that blend for myself. I didn't make that blend so that I could just go and sell it to people. You know, pretty much almost all of the blends that I have, I made for myself to use for me. And if it didn't work for me, I wouldn't sell it. And, you know, I didn't even originally have the intent on selling any of the blends. You know, with the Easy Breathe, years later, when I was living with my friend Elena and Patrick and Westchester, again, I got sick one winter, and I was sitting in the kitchen with a pot of boiling water and some Easy Breathe and a towel over my head, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm decongesting." And They're like, well, let me smell that. And I held it up and they stuck their nose in it and they were like, wow, I've got sinuses where I didn't know I had sinuses. And they're like, do you sell that? And I'm like, I haven't to this point in time, but if anybody wants to buy some, sure, I can make it for them. And that's actually how I started selling stuff is, I was using things for myself and then started to sell them. And in fact, my Reiki master teacher, I guess it was around 98, had a tent up at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair. If you have never been to that, I suggest you go sometime. But she told me that I should join her, and I had taken my massage table up. So I was doing some massages at the Renaissance Fair, and the next week she goes, well, why don't you bring some of your Easy Breathe, because it's cold season, people have sinus issues, and why don't you try and sell some? I actually made more selling my Easy Breathe than I did doing massages all day.
I believe.
So, when people just think, oh, well, that's a little treatment that I can add on to, what I'm doing when I treat somebody, you can make more money off of that than you actually can do a massage, because you can sell 100 bottles at a time of an essential oil blend where you can only do one massage per hour, with your own two hands. So what you're looking at now, that slide, that's clary sage. And there's a lot more chemical compounds in clary sage than what you're seeing. You're just seeing the main ones. So linalool acetate, which is an ester, is a sedative. You have 1,8-cineol oxide, which is an expectorant. Linalool, which is an alcohol or a stimulant. Camphor, which is a ketone or a mucolytic. Caryophenol, which is an aldehyde, which is anti-inflammatory. And limonene, which is a monoterpene, which is antiviral. So all of those things are in clary sage. So an expectorant or a mucolytic does what? It breaks up mucus. So camphor is actually also in eucalyptus, which is what helps break up the mucus in your respiratory system. 1,8-cineol, also found in eucalyptus essential oil, is an expectorant. So that expectorant helps you to cough up and get rid of and expel the broken up mucus. And there's an antiviral, so you can see just by the chemical makeup that this would be a good thing to use if you had a respiratory infection.
Wow. So I was just thinking, so maybe a little mask with some aromatherapy built right in.
Well, exactly. So, I said to you last week that, when I watch the Food Network, I don't just normally watch any show. I mean, I'll put shows on in the background, but my favorite show was Alton Brown's Good Eats. And the reason I like that is when he said add a cup of sugar to, a little bit of corn syrup if you're making candies, everybody else just told you to do it. He told you why you had to do it and the chemical reaction because of it. And that's the kind of nerdy stuff that I like.
And that's why we love you.
Well, it's because, I like to know why I have to do things or not do things, not just, I guess it's the Aquarian in me where you don't just say, don't do that. You have to tell them why you don't do that so that it makes sense. But the other nice thing about it is anytime I get an essential oil, I can look at the active chemicals that are in it and I can automatically tell what those things are good for without even having to look it up. And the nice thing is like thyme is an expectorant. Fenugreek is an expectorant. So if I take those two essential oils and add them to clary sage, it's going to enhance the expectorant properties of the clary sage. So even though something does well for a certain thing, when you put like things together, it makes them stronger.
So that was the whole issue, what you said in a nutshell. When we were trying to use the aromatherapy products for her leg, because it was just huge and stagnant lymph, she couldn't even purchase soap from the shelf of a store without it causing problems for her skin. Her skin was dry, it was tight, and then if you used the aromatherapy products they had, her legs would actually blister. And So we brought you some of the things that were used. And John, share with them what you found inside of the aromatherapy products they were charging maximum dollar for with minimum results.
Well, we did a chemical analysis of them by sending them to a lab that a friend of my dad's worked for at one of the major universities. And basically what they found out is that they were using a synthetic binder to bind all the oils together. So, you know, what I was talking about with all the phytochemicals and stuff and single note oils like clary sage or eucalyptus or whatever. Normally in a blend, when you open up a blend, you'll smell the blend and then you'll say, okay, I smell a little rosemary or a little clary sage or a little eucalyptus or whatever else is in there. Well, with these blends, you couldn't really smell that. You only smelled the blend. And then there were these like perfumey undertones that just was kind of off. So what it turned out to be is the synthetic binder. That binder binds all those notes together so that they don't lift separately, so people can't try and get rid of the smell. So your synthetics are actually going to cause problems. So the picture you're looking at now is, you know, Neat is just using essential oil directly on the skin. Now, some people could always have a reaction, which is why you always have to do a test. But this one in particular, citrus oils are phototoxic, which means when the sunlight hits citrus oil on your skin, it can cause blistering. Well, this woman had gone to a massage therapist who used some citrus oils. He didn't use them directly on the skin, but when he stepped out of the room, she put some on, and because she liked the smell, and he was like, well, don't go, you can't go in the sunlight and stuff for 24 hours afterwards. Well, she decided to go to the tanning bed.
Oh,
And this is the reaction she got from having the citrus oils on her skin and then going to the tanning bed for only 15 minutes.
wow. That is amazing.
And I talked to her and she was like, because she was asking me about questions about it. And she goes, you know, I'm not going to sue him because it was my stupidity, but, you know, is this normal and stuff? And I'm like, yeah, that's why he was telling you not to go out in the sunlight or do a tanning bed and stuff, because, you know, this is the kind of reaction you can have. And of course, those blisters are full of lymph.
Exactly. And that's on a person, I want to emphasize this. This is on a person with a relatively healthy lymph system. This isn't even like someone who has a serious lymph issue to begin with. So imagine that happening to someone who has lymphatic issues. It would be like times 10. And that's what we were seeing with Anne. And then you got the formulation that we asked you, commissioned you, and said, John, help us. What to use that will permeate the skin, improve the vessel physiology where you can get the lymphangiomotoricity and get the viscosity of that lymph down so it'll move. So do you want to tell them what you did?
Well, we created quite a few different blends to see which ones we were going to like the best. That next slide, if you want to go to it.
Okay.
So those are your best essential oils for the lymphatic system. The different oils do different things. Some of them will actually help the plates of the lymph vessels and stuff to open and close. Some actually help the muscles and the tissues that the anchoring filaments are attached to contract to cause movement. Some of them will actually help, you know, the lymph nodes to flush. We also have juniper berry on there, which is a diuretic, which normally, you know, in lymphatic classes, you know, they say don't use a diuretic. But in some instances, you kind of need to have a a diuretic, because if you're helping the lymphatic system to flow, to wait for the back that flow to get out of the system. You know, you don't want to only use a diuretic, but you do want to use you do want to do use something that's going to help flush everything out.
So, John, it was very interesting too. I remember asking you about the processing. The processing, this is really, it is. It's a science. It's not just an art about being able to get these items at just the right time, at the peak of their harvest and things like that. So I think you even had a woman that you were saying she has a still that picks up these things at just the prime season, so you're getting it at the peak of harvest.
Yeah, I work with a woman out in Oregon, a wonderful woman. She has her own lab, but she also does have a still on her truck. If she can get the stuff locally, she'll drive right out to the farm, to the organic farms. She will cut the material that she needs, and she will still it right there on the truck, and then bottle it up and ship it. She luckily doesn't use steam distillation. So with the steam distillation, if anybody's kind of familiar with a still, you know, you have the plant material in a vessel, you're putting steam into the vessel, which actually heats up the plant material and releases the essential oils. It goes in through a cooling tube, and when it gets to the other side of the cooling tube, it drips into another vessel, which fills up with the water, which is then called a hydrosol. And on top of that would be the layer of essential oils. Well, what she does is she uses carbon dioxide instead of water. And if you know anything about carbon dioxide, normally it's a gas. So it has a much lower boiling temperature than water does. So the temperature that the steam from the carbon dioxide that reaches the plant material is cool, so it doesn't actually start the destruction mechanism in the oils that will break it down. So normally if you smell a oil that's been steam distilled, it smells like the plant, but not 100%. When you use carbon dioxide, it smells exactly how the plant smells, because none of those chemicals in the plant in that essential oil have started breaking down.
So it's kind of like boiling your broccoli when you kind of take some of its essence out when you're in that boiling phase. Whereas with this process, it keeps it in its healthy state without
Exactly.
getting all the best out of it. And it was really interesting because when we got John's blend for our patient and we put it on her, oh my goodness, you know, imagine 28 years of having difficulty trying to wash your lemon. Now finally you have something that works, it smells good. She's loving this. She finally has a product. He makes her feel like she's a princess. She's got her own personalized line there now. And she called back a week later and said, can he make a salt scrub? I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she has no idea how hard it was to get a personalized master aromatherapist just to get the formulation right. But we called John back, and John, you did. You were able to turn it into a salt scrub, a sugar scrub. And then I got this brilliant idea in my room. This is something you guys might want to think about. Because of working with lymph all day long, like I said, that smell permeates the air, guys. When it's really bad, it's in the air, it permeates your sheets, and even when they leave the room, it just lingers, this smell of stagnant lymph. And I thought, I wonder if John can make it into a candle, an aromatherapy candle that I could put on a warmer, so I'd have that smell in the room. So I called John back and said, hey, John, can you turn this into a candle? He's like, oh yeah, why did you ask? I said, well, I'm asking. And so he made it into a candle. And then from there, then the patients in the room started to smell it. And then they started asking, they said, what is that? It's amazing how the patients were all attracted to it. Male, female, it didn't matter. It's kind of a unisex fragrance. And then I fell in love with it too. So guys, just so you know, I will show you the blend here a little bit more, but I carry mine with me. The Lympho Breathe, it really does its diligence for a therapist that's in and around the smell of lymph all day long. And
You know, it's kind of interesting because most of the products, you know, I already were making for myself, like the candles and the massage oil and stuff. It was interesting with the candles because my initial thought with the candle was, you know, since I would go to people's homes, you know, they may have candles, some may not. So I wanted to just have a little candle with me, and I wanted to have some aromatherapy in there. So I had my NeuroBreathe, which was my relaxing blend, and my Reiki master teacher, she used to make these fantastic Reiki infused candles with essential oils and herbs and stuff. And her and I made some votive candles. And it was nice because, you know, after the massage, you know, I wasn't going to put, you know, a melting wax candle in my bag and stuff. So I'd let the customer keep it. And I'm like, there's got to be a better thing that I can do. And she goes, well, why don't we try jar candles? Because then you can put a label on it, and, you know, then your information's on that label. So that's what I started doing. I started doing a jar candle, and I would have my label on there, and that's basically like another form of advertising, because if somebody had it at their house and then they lit the candle when they had company, somebody said, wow, that smells really good. Where'd you get it? Oh, my massage therapist, he makes those and stuff. So, you know, it was really, really good advertising at the time. So to put other blends to it was no problem at all. I actually use an organic soy wax to make the candles out of.
And then John, your blend, they've heard part of the story, but not the whole thing. Because you use MPS as well, and Antoine was using the MPS at the White House. He was the White House massage therapist, and you guys were teaching together. But this one day in particular, he asked you about what to do for the senators with serious edema, because he had to accelerate the outcome. He had minimal time, needed maximum outcome, and he used your MPS with Lympho Breathe. Tell him what happened.
Well, you know, he was asking me if I actually use the MPS with lymphatic drainage, and I say, well, normally what I'll do is, you know, I release the scars, I treat the abdomen, and then I do the MPS, and then I do manual afterwards, and I say I get a really good results. And he goes, well, you know, with the oils, do you use the oils? I said, yeah, I put the oils on the water points, and then I hit the water points with the MPS, and that actually make things go faster. And he goes, well, I think I'm going to have to try that, because I have a couple senators next week that, you know, they really have some bad issues, and I really need to get these people moving. So I said, well, you know, get some of the Lympho Breathe and try it. And, you know, we marked out the water points to use, and a few days later, I get this text saying, oh, holy crap, this stuff really works.
It did. In driving it in there where it just broke up the viscosity. And, you know, it was funny. I thought of it after you shared the story that, yeah, a lot of our Congress and senators, guys, they're in the 50+ club, and they fly a lot. And so they get
and when they're not flying, they're sitting there at a desk.
Yeah, a lot of stagnant lymph there, and having to accelerate those outcomes and do it safely. So since that time, John, this product, like you said, you weren't trying to sell it. You were helping people, and it just kept taking on a life of its own. And finally, after all that, we're in Florida for our convention, and we wind up in the hot tub. Everybody's exhausted at the end of the night, and there's a very unique person we got to know. And tell them the story, who it was and what happened.
Which one was that? Oh my God, there's so many stories.
And Jean.
Oh, actually, that was funny because that I've known Angie for years, but that actually happened the first time I really talked to her in depth. We were at the Omni Resort, and it was the day after convention. It was the Sunday where there were just a few classes left, and the vending hall was closed, and I actually had a booth there, and everybody had already been out to the pool area, and like all of the chairs were gone, and I'm laying on my chair, and Angie comes walking up, and she goes, you know, she's like, there's no chairs. She goes, I know you from FSMTA. We talk and stuff, and you were the vendor next to me, and can I just put my stuff down and let's go on the lazy river? And we're on the lazy river, and and at that point I had a whole bunch of other candles, and she's like, there were, I heard that there was this vendor that like had white sage candles, and she goes, I didn't even have a chance to go look at them, and I'm like, Angie, that was me. So she did get some of them, but the next year, her booth and my booth were right across from each other, and I had a friend of mine helping me out at the sales, and he was working with this one woman, and I was working with somebody else, and the woman that he was working with was not sure whether or not she really wanted to get any of the oils, and Angie comes walking over, and she goes, you see all of this stuff that I have over there? I only buy his products.
And that says a lot, because she's been with Massage Warehouse for how long?
Oh, as long as I know.
I know, just love her dearly. And then also, you've been approached by some major companies about that blend, have you not?
I've been approached for a couple of my blends, and let's just say I won't sell them because I won't let them add the synthetic binders. So.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Chris.
Have you ever thought of making the smaller bars with that, of your blends, that would melt in like the Scentsy warmers that so many people have?
I've thought about it. I actually haven't started getting into that yet, though.
Okay.
So that's a good question, Chris. And we love the blend so much, but the integrity, John was approached many times, and you know what? I was amazed because they wanted him to change one or two ingredients here and there, and he will not do it to keep the purity there.
Right.
And that goes right back to the same problem we had with my patient. They compromised, and because of that, that's what made her leg blister. So I'm really grateful John kept it pure. But you guys do have some ideas and thoughts for bringing it out to the public. But
one of the issues is that and I see this with my essential breed, which is my spirituality blend, which is the blend that we use for scars for MPS, and it's got sandalwood in it. Well, so many years ago, sandalwood was declared an endangered species, and the price went through the roof on sandalwood oil. It went, my retail cost, it used to be about $15 for a half ounce of sandalwood. And then within a matter of a year, the wholesale price was over $600 for an ounce. And I was like, and that's for pure sandalwood. And there's different types of sandalwood, but for the true sandalwood, that was the price. And my thought was, well, I could replace it with something else where I can raise my price. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather sell fewer and keep it the same than to change it, because I know how I am when I'm gotten used to using a product and then they change the formulation just to make it cheaper. And I'm like, well, I don't even want to use that anymore because I don't have the same results. So, it was that integrity that I kind of had to keep. Now, luckily, there have been farmers that have been starting to farm sandalwood, and the price is starting to come down again. But, it's still going to be a pricey blend while the price is that much.
Though, I had up there on the screen. This is if they wanted to get in more contact with you too. This is your website.
Oh, good.
So like,
Yeah, that's my therapeutic website. Now the neat thing is I had a different. I mean, it was the same website address, but it was a different look to it, which you'll see in a minute. But there's a company out there called B12, and they develop websites, and they're using artificial intelligence. So if you put in that, you're a healthcare provider, and that's the type of website, I mean, they take, especially if you already have a website built, they'll take some of the key characters of it and then make the AI that does it just makes it a lot stronger. And what they did for the website, I'm like, I've got to do this.
Nice.
And it
Thank
looks a
you.
lot more professional. And if I have questions, they're there 24 hours for support. It was just a great change for my website.
it looks nice because yeah, this is the time we're all freshening up while we've had some time at home, and it wasn't that much, was it, John? I mean,
No, it's $100 a month, but I mean, I get I'm in the top so many like top couple pages or something on the search engines and stuff. So yeah, it was not that much.
Excellent.
and this was what it was kind of before.
Yeah, that was actually because I didn't originally have a massage website. I used to have more for the essential oil, so that was the site that I had. That's actually I guess it's the third generation of it. And that was done on Microsoft Expression Web 4. And I've for up until this time, I've been doing my own website. So it also helped me out because I didn't have to do the coding.
Wow. So, but there's all the products well, not all of them, but quite a few that you had there. So,
Yeah, massage oils and candles and bath salts and salt scrubs and
there's John's page. If you guys want to friend him, and at 2:00 in the morning when you're questioning all your aromatherapy needs, he's a night owl. So this is someone you could talk to when that thought hits you at 3 a.m.
yeah, that's my page. That's the Other Worlds Therapies page, which has been getting a lot more people looking at it.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
I see you with MPS, and you guys are, you're talking about MPS, and that was a wonderful Zoom presentation a few weeks ago on MPS.
Uh-huh.
But for myself, who I am a massage therapist without any degrees or certifications beyond that, like PT and OT, when I looked, because I was very interested in that. And when I contacted our board, I was told we cannot, in North Carolina, massage therapists cannot use any type of an electrical device. So
Okay.
I am not allowed to use the MPS, which was such a, I was really, really disappointed. But that's what it would be categorized correct?
It's kind of weird, and you may want to have the board contact Acumed about it, because while it is technically electrical because it works off of a battery, the issue is it used to be called ETPS, which used to stand for Electrical Therapeutic Point Stimulation. And that's what it was when I first took it back in 2005. A few years ago, we wanted to take the units over to Europe. And when we did that, they told us that we weren't allowed to call it ETPS over there because it wasn't electrical, because it works off of a microcurrent. Because to them, electrical was so much of a current or more. Anything under that being microcurrent wasn't considered quote unquote electrical. So you may want to have somebody from Acumed explain that to them, and maybe they'll change it because it's approved by the FDA as over the counter. So I would think that they would want somebody that's a healthcare provider to teach the public how to use them properly. So it could be a way around it.
Yeah, because it had said no electrical stimulation devices.
Yeah.
So that was the hang up, and I just got a big old no on it. But I hadn't given up at all. I just was looking for more direction on it because it just seems too beneficial.
Yeah, they're very bad. I mean, it completely changed how I practice, and
Okay.
now
All
I
right.
don't do anything without using them.
Thank you for sharing that in the B12 information also on that website.
You're welcome.
Developer. Thank you.
I wanted you to see something. I'm going to lift up the microphone so we can ask John some of these questions too. But this is the picture of the flower that was named after him. Look
Yeah.
at. That was just in the past year. I told you he grows orchids. He's also an orchid judge, and they named the flower after John. So now you get a chance to see. So I'm saying it wrong, John. You say it right. I got the Romano part right, but
Dahlia.
Sobralium romanoi.
wow.
So pretty.
It was discovered in 2013 in Guatemala by Freddie Arquila Morales. And he tells me that the color that comes off in the photo isn't accurate because the flower is more blue than what you're seeing, but the blue isn't being picked up by the camera.
Wow. And it's not often that you see blue flowers.
Exactly. So it's more of a blue violet, but you're seeing more violet there than the blue.
So what an honor to have someone name their flower after you, especially one that's beautiful.
Well, you know, I run a few groups on Facebook, and one is the Sobralium brassolia group. And he was like, you know, you do so much for the group that, you know, I just discovered this orchid and I want to name it after you. And I was really honored. I mean, I was almost in tears because, you know, there's people out there that do, you know, that would like die to have, you know, a new species named after them.
That was so beautiful. And I know, you know, I couldn't think, and it's not just being a friend, just knowing you, all the years of professionalism and all the free advice you've given to people about aromatherapy and about plants. It's well deserved. It's very well deserved. In fact, John, just so you know, there's all kind. I see Tag is in there from North Carolina, and she's saying how she loves aromatherapy. You should see what people are saying in the chat here. In fact, yes, I use essential oils every day. That's Ben. I love using aromatherapy. I use essential oils all the time. Now, Ben also had something in there he was saying. Oh, I will send you the list, Ben. I got you there. I got you covered. And then Larry said something. He says, are you talking about using the essential oil straight on the skin or in a base oil that causes issues on the skin? That was his question.
In a blend, it's usually pretty, you can usually use them directly on the skin. I know a lot of aromatherapy classes and a lot of books will tell you not to, but it's because most of the people that, you know, write those books or who they write the books for are not in the medical profession or the healthcare industry. I know a lot of acupuncturists and stuff, they'll use essential oils right on the skin before they do needling, have no problems. Now, the thing is you always do a skin test. So you want to skin test somebody before you would use it directly on the skin. You can also put it into a carrier oil. So either one of those is good. Just remember that the carrier oil also has properties that are beneficial or not beneficial for the skin. So if you're using an essential oil with a carrier oil that is going to counteract it, then you might as well not use that carrier oil to begin with.
So, John, Ben also asked, what do you know of hydrosols?
So when I was talking about how they use the still and they use heat, and the heat creates the steam, and the steam goes through the plant material, and then once it goes through the cooling tube into the collection bottle, that collection bottle fills up with the condensed steam or water, with the essential oil that lays on top of it. The oil on top is the essential oil. The water that's left over is called a hydrosol, which will also still smell like the plant that was used, but it won't be as strong as the essential oil. Hydrosols are great. I mean, you can get a hydrosol of lavender or something and, spray it on the sheets or your face cradle before the customer lays down on it, and, they'll have the smell, but it won't be overpowering like, or as strong as an essential oil. So it's another good way of subtly using aromatherapy.
Hey, John, you just got a special commission here from Chelsea. She
Oh, yeah?
wants to know, she goes, I know there's essential oils for cats and dogs. Are you going to make a book for horses?
I have been in the process of writing a book for a couple of years now, and it is called The Compendium of Essential and Carrier Oils, and I'm still writing it, so it's not finished yet.
I hear you. So it's on the way. It's being birthed. We'll be a little more patient, and it's going to come out, and we're all going to get a copy here. We'll have to bring John back on with his new book. And somebody else just jumped in here. Can you talk about spagyric process utilized by Gerlique Naturopathica?
That I'm not familiar with.
So you're not familiar with that one. What I
No,
am
so
going to do.
I'll look that one up.
It's a process that goes back to Egypt, where they would tap the essential oils in 3 ways, as I understood it, and only a handful of companies that just use organic products use that. So I think what they do is they will distill, they will percolate, and they will they will burn, and then they will add the ash back to the distillation process and to the percolation process. And they say that it puts off a small amount of